What has unfolded in London over the past few hours is so grave that many experts are already calling it the biggest international crisis faced by the UK since the Cold War. And the most terrifying part? Keir Starmer's government is hiding details that could completely change how you see what's happening. Just before dawn, before the sun even touched the rooftops of Westminster, an encrypted alert from the Kremlin landed in the British Foreign Office's system and plunged the country into absolute tension. Ministers were woken in haste, military chiefs cancelled engagements, and security personnel sprinted through Whitehall's corridors as if something had exploded. But nothing had exploded. Yet. What arrived was worse than an explosion. It was an ultimatum. A brutal, direct warning from Vladimir Putin, giving Starmer just 72 hours to respond, or face consequences the government dares not mention in public. And this is where you, especially if you're over 45 and have seen much of the world's turmoil, need to understand. When a government hides details in the name of national security, it almost always means the problem is far bigger than they're admitting. The atmosphere inside government became so heavy that insiders claim to have seen ministers literally trembling as they read the most sensitive parts of the Russian message. The question no one in Downing Street wants to answer is simple, direct, obvious. What exactly did the UK do to provoke this level of fury from the Kremlin? And why does Starmer seem so desperate to keep the public in the dark? When he went to Parliament to explain, what unfolded was a humiliating scene for any leader. Starmer took to the dispatch box with his usual scripted speech, trying to project strength, but his expression betrayed fear. He repeated rehearsed lines, praised the intelligence services, and said, "The UK's security is assured." But no one believed him, not even his own allies. The Conservatives rose to demand answers. Reform UK accused the government of playing with fire without an exit plan, and even Labour MPs exchanged nervous glances. And it's at this exact moment in the footage that the viewer begins to realize Starmer hasn't just lost control of the external situation, he's lost control of his own country. As chaos gripped Parliament, the crisis leaked through the corridors of power like water from a burst pipe. Classified information began circulating among veteran journalists, ex-military figures, and security analysts, all saying the same thing. There was a second part to Putin's message, a part Starmer had hidden even from most MPs. This secret section, according to multiple independent sources, contained an explicit and dangerous demand that the UK immediately withdraw strategic support for a crucial ally in Eastern Europe. If Starmer complied, the West would lose faith in British leadership. If he refused, he would be directly challenging a nuclear power in the midst of a territorial war. The country found itself trapped between two possible tragedies. And the most chilling detail? The same sources say Putin made it clear that the 72-hour deadline is not a suggestion. It's a countdown already in motion. This sent the public into an instant state of emotional alert, because those with more life experience know that deadlines like this never appear without real consequences. But the chaos didn't stay behind closed doors. As the first leaks emerged, people took to the streets, driven by outrage, fear, and deep distrust of the government. Westminster Bridge filled with protesters waving Union Jacks and holding signs demanding immediate transparency. Some shouted for a tough stance against Russia. Others accused Starmer of cowardice and secrecy. Helicopters hovered at low altitude. Police formed tense barriers, and journalists broadcast live with expressions that made one thing clear. This was no ordinary protest. It was the start of a silent civil panic, where no one knows exactly what's happening, but everyone senses something serious is being hidden. In Manchester, Birmingham, and Edinburgh, spontaneous groups sprang up like sparks. The feeling was that the country was about to cross an invisible line, and those over 45, especially the patriotic audience who follow your channel, recognize such signs. They're the same ones that appeared just before major political ruptures. And just when it seemed the crisis had reached its peak, something even more unexpected happened. Buckingham Palace broke its silence. A brief statement, rarely used in political moments, said that His Majesty is fully informed and deeply concerned about the situation. To the average citizen, this might sound formal, almost decorative, but those who understand British politics, especially the more experienced, patriotic, and attentive public, know this phrase is an institutional earthquake. The king never intervenes, never shows explicit concern, unless things have completely slipped out of the elected government's control. And the movement of royal advisers, reported by palace sources, only reinforced the mood. Urgent meetings, late-night phone calls, reports flowing in and out of the royal residence. The silent message behind this statement was clear. The Crown is watching because it suspects the government is not handling the crisis with the necessary seriousness. This is exactly the kind of warning that deeply unsettles those who have seen weak governments falter in critical moments. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the White House spoke out even before Downing Street had organized its own narrative. This left the UK perplexed and shaken. The US government condemned Moscow's aggressive rhetoric and declared full support for the UK, but to experienced analysts, the tone seemed more worried than supportive. Why did the Americans know so much before the British public? Why did they respond first? And most importantly, what has Washington discovered that London is still hiding? This role reversal made it clear that Starmer had lost diplomatic control of the crisis. He isn't leading, he's reacting. Observers noted that even traditional allies seemed to be acting as if the UK were at real risk of destabilization. For your audience, who already sees Starmer as weak and lacking authority, this episode only confirms the perception that the country is in the hands of an unprepared leader at a time when strength and clarity are vital. Then came the most alarming revelation of all. High-ranking sources in the British Armed Forces confirmed, even anonymously, that Putin's warning was not mere rhetoric. A senior commander described the situation as extreme strategic risk positioning, warning that if the UK showed weakness now, it wouldn't just be Russia that saw vulnerability, but all global adversaries who have been testing British resolve in recent years. This kind of statement, coming from those who truly understand the military landscape, sets off a deep alarm in the more mature public, who know the weight of these words. Inside the Ministry of Defense, silent protocols began to be activated. Teams were recalled in the middle of the night, internal communications switched to emergency encrypted channels, and analysts started working in continuous shifts. The atmosphere, according to an officer who witnessed the movement, was the same as in moments preceding major international ruptures. It was as if the country had been pushed to the brink, without the government admitting it to the public. But what sent the country into absolute shock was the leak of an alleged final line from Putin's message. A cold, dry, direct statement saying the UK had exactly 72 hours to respond formally, or face unspecified consequences. Downing Street's refusal to confirm or deny this information only deepened the silent panic. With every hour of government silence, more theories emerged. More analysts tried to fill the gaps. More citizens wondered if they were being prepared for something much bigger. And as Starmer hid behind rehearsed phrases about national security, helicopters began crisscrossing the night sky, military vehicles moved discreetly, and key government departments switched to contingency mode. For the over 45s, who follow your politics closely and have lived through real international tensions, the signs were too clear to ignore. The country wasn't just facing a crisis, it was facing a historic moment, one that demands leadership, courage, and transparency. And none of these seemed to be coming from Starmer. Before I go on, I need to ask you something very important. If you're a patriot, if you care about the future of the UK and refuse to accept Starmer's shameful silence, then please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. This really helps spread the truth the government is trying to hide and gets this content to more people who need to understand the scale of this crisis. It costs nothing and strengthens our community of Britons who won't accept being deceived. As the night wore on, internal reports confirmed that the national threat level had been discreetly raised, with no official public announcement. Lights burning in departments that would normally be empty at that hour betrayed the gravity of the situation. Technocrats, military strategists, and intelligence agents returned to their desks as if a silent war were beginning. And all the while, Keir Starmer remained locked in endless meetings, trying to balance three factors that should never collide: preventing civil panic, preserving international alliances, and stopping Russia from interpreting any move as provocation. Not even veteran leaders can maintain this kind of balance for long, and Starmer, already under pressure from scandals, criticism, and doubts about his resolve, seemed a man on the verge of breaking. For the older public, used to judging leaders by their behavior in critical moments, the image was devastating. A prime minister hesitating in the face of the greatest test of his career. While Starmer hid behind closed doors, the whole country tried to interpret the government's silent signals. Unusual military movements, urgent phone calls between London and Washington, and short, almost enigmatic messages from European allies. Specialist analysts realized something was deeply wrong when NATO increased air monitoring frequency over the North Sea. This is not routine. This is a warning. And the more the government avoided clear explanations, the more the public filled with distrust and anger. The patriotic public, who already see Starmer as a weak leader, began to view the situation even more critically. A UK on the brink of diplomatic or military confrontation, led by a prime minister who inspires no confidence. It was at this moment that many commentators uttered the phrase that echoed on social media and local radio. It's not about what Putin said, it's about what Starmer isn't saying. And now we reach the most critical point in this script, the decision Keir Starmer must make in the coming hours. A choice so heavy that any path could trigger unpredictable consequences. If he yields to Russian demands, he weakens the UK in the eyes of its allies, tarnishes decades of British diplomacy, and confirms to the world that London now bows under foreign pressure. On the other hand, if he defies Putin, he risks plunging the country into diplomatic or even military escalation at a time when the British economy is fragile and confidence in the government is plummeting. This crossroads has left Starmer isolated, surrounded by divided advisors, and pressured by MPs, veterans, and even the Crown. For those over 45, especially your loyal channel audience, this all sounds too familiar. Weak leader plus external threat, plus lack of transparency, disaster foretold. And Starmer seems to be repeating, step by step, all the classic mistakes unprepared leaders have made throughout history. And while you're here, comment below which city or country you're watching this from. It's always amazing to see how far our voice reaches: London, Manchester, Belfast, Birmingham, Scotland, Wales, or even Brits living abroad. Your participation shows there's an attentive, informed people who won't accept being kept in the dark. As the deadline ticks down, every minute increases the sense that the UK is about to enter uncharted territory. TV networks prepare emergency broadcasts, newspapers across the country await updates that never come, and experts say they've never seen such a lack of clarity from a government facing such a direct threat. The public, especially the more experienced, have already realized there's a chasm between what's being said and what's really happening. And the final question echoing in every pub, every living room, every radio station is simple and anguished. How can you trust a government that hides just when the country needs answers most? For many Britons, the real threat no longer seems to be just Russia, but Starmer's inability to lead a country on the brink of a historic crisis. At the heart of this whirlwind, something even more dangerous is growing. The perception that the government has completely lost control of the narrative. When a prime minister allows leaks, rumors, and anonymous sources to replace official information, he opens the door to social chaos. And that's exactly what happened. Each new leak, from the Russian ultimatum to American pressures, from military alerts to movements within Buckingham Palace, fed a collective sense of abandonment. The British people, especially those with more experience and historical memory, know how to spot when a government is afraid. And that's what's most terrifying. The fear isn't just on the streets. It's inside Downing Street. Insiders describe Starmer as exhausted, overwhelmed, and emotionally unstable, struggling to maintain composure as the 72-hour deadline looms. A strong leader would unite the country, speak clearly, explain the risks. A weak leader, however, hides. And that's exactly what Starmer has done. And now, with the clock ticking down, the UK faces a question that will define its immediate future. What will Starmer do when the ultimatum expires? It's the kind of dilemma that separates statesmen from amateurs. If he remains silent, he'll show the world unprecedented weakness, and global adversaries never waste such opportunities. If he tries to improvise a response, he risks provoking even more tension with a military power not known for empty threats. And if he makes concessions, he'll put the UK on its knees before Moscow, something much of the population will never accept. The truth is harsh, uncomfortable, and impossible to ignore. The nation's immediate future is in the hands of its most insecure and contested leader in years. And as the country waits, apprehensive, one thing is already clear to millions of Britons, including your patriotic, attentive, and outraged audience. This moment is not just a diplomatic crisis. It's the greatest leadership test in the UK's recent history. And the question hanging over the entire nation is simple, but devastating. Will Starmer rise to the occasion, or will he be remembered as the Prime Minister who failed when the country needed him most?